Hi, good evening everyone. I am Rachel Ganantial and we are already on our session 9 for the subject Human Resources Management. The topic for the session tonight is all about training human resources. You might wonder, there's like training and development and why we are only discussing training. Well, I intentionally spliced the topic into two so that you would have better understanding what training is and what development is. So after the two sessions, I would expect that you would have a clearer view or understanding the difference between training and development. So let's get started. At the end of the session, you should be able to define training and discuss why a strategic approach is important, discuss the four phases of the training process, identify three types of analysis used to determine training needs, explain different means of internal and external training delivery, and describe the importance of e-learning as part of the current training efforts. Well, what we are doing right now is part of e-learning, so I would expect that you would be able to relate on the e-learning portion. Well, to start with, I'd like to declare that the competitive pressures facing organizations today require the employees or staff's knowledge and ideas to be updated, current, and that they have skills and abilities that can deliver results. Well, as organizations compete and change to increase organizational performance, training of employees and managers becomes even more critical than before. So, employees who must adapt to the many changes facing organizations must be trained continually in order to maintain and update their capabilities. So, of course, managers must have training and development to enhance their managerial and leadership skills and abilities. So, definitely, effective training is a crucial component to of the whole HR management. So, what is training? It is a process whereby people acquire capabilities to perform jobs. Training provides employees with specific identifiable knowledge and skills for use in their present job. So, for example, you have just been hired by a company and that before you will be authorized to actually do the job, then there will be series of onboarding process and part of which is orientation and the actual training for you to be able to acquire knowledge, skills, and capabilities good for you to perform your job efficiently. So, organizational usage of training may include hard skills and soft skills. Okay, so we train for hard skills, we train for soft skills. When we say hard skills, that's about teaching sales representatives how to use intranet resources. So, sales representatives will be able to know the intranet resources. So, that's acquiring hard skills. Or a branch manager, how to review an income statement. Okay? Or a machinist apprentice, how to set up a drill press. And soft skills are critical in many instances and can be taught as well, which may include, of course, communications, mentoring, managing a meeting, and working as part of a team. It's more of like acquiring the soft skills, training, leadership skills, or customer service skills. These are like part of soft skills. But in a customer service soft training, the hard skill of which for you to learn is to be able to navigate the functions or functionalities of, let's say, the software or the phone systems that you will be using in order to contact the customers, or perhaps the product itself that you wanted to really know the technical aspect of the product so that you will be able to learn how to provide support efficiently. All right. So this is about the training categories. Training can be designed, sorry, to meet the number of objectives and can be classified in various ways. So these are the common training categories, and I want you to pay attention to this one. So we have required and regular. Okay, so this is about safety compliance, driving provisions if um, it is being required by the company. So wage and hour rules, employee orientation, benefits enrollment, sexual harassment prevention. So all those aspects part of your onboarding process. We call it like required and regular training. Like you need to be oriented with the rules and regulations, the guidelines, the house rules, okay? Because we cannot allow you to, you know, join us without knowing how the systems work, okay? And there's like a job technical training. So this actually enables employees to perform their jobs well. So this is about customer service, equipment operations, record keeping, telecommunications, and all. So interpersonal problem solving skills. So this is about communication skills and team relationship, coaching skills, problem analysis. These are just examples, right? But when we say interpersonal and problem solving training, this actually addresses both operational and interpersonal problems. Okay. So when we see developmental and career training, so we have business trends, strategic thinking, leadership, change management, career planning, performance management. Okay, it is clearly explained in here also. We talk about required and regular training, so this complies with the various mandated legal requirements. So, of course, Dolly would want companies to lay down the house rules and regulations. Okay, it is also very important for new employees to know the guidelines because it is very hard for them to perform their work without knowing the rules of the company. Let's say if their manager simply call up their attention because they violated something and they were not oriented properly, so that goes against the performance of the HR department. Okay, so job technical writing or training, so this enables employees to perform their jobs well. Okay, interpersonal and problem solving training addresses both organizational and interpersonal problems. Okay, there will be conflicts within the team, and so like we will have to capacitate or provide training for our managers, supervisors, team leaders, so they would be able to cope the conflict that may happen, okay, within their team. And developmental and career training, this provides longer term focus to enhance individual and organizational capabilities for future, let's say business practices, executive development, organizational change. As you may have recalled that there is like organizational or change management here. Change management may happen if your business is being taken over by a different entity due to merging or buyout or acquisition. Okay. Now let's proceed to legal issues and training. Okay. We have to carefully consider the criteria and practices because there is a number of legal cases or issues which must be considered when you design and deliver the training. So that's why you have to make sure that the criteria are job related and do not unfairly restrict the participation of protected class member. This happens to, you know, hitting good with the diverse population or diverse profile of our workforce. Employers requiring employees to sign training contracts in order to protect the cost and the time invested in specialized employee training. Let's say you are already in the company and then like the company requires you to attend a training abroad. Okay, the company will not just simply spend, huge amount of money to for you to attend a training without protecting their interests. I mean, like, it is a possibility that you are trained abroad, but when you come back, you will have to resign. So, I mean, the company is just throwing money down the drain, right? So, well, of course, failure to accommodate the participation of employees or individuals, um, let's say individuals with disabilities or individuals coming from, you know, minorities. This training exposes organizations to violation of, or, some discrimination laws. So in this context, I'd like to emphasize that you have to provide the training equally. Okay, because we're talking about the legal issues of training. Okay, it cannot be viewed by employee that you only give the training in favor to one group of employees or employees that you believe are superior, okay, over the other employees who may belong to a different social demographic class, okay? And training and organizational strategy. One of the objectives we have on this session is to emphasize the strategic objective when we do training, okay? We have to make sure that training represents a significant HR contribution simply because this calls for an HR expenditure for most of the employers. Training is very, very expensive and costly. But of course, it is too often viewed tactically rather than strategically. So, which means that training is seen normally as a short term activity rather than one that has a longer term effect on organizational success. So, the context of strategic training is just to emphasize the long-term effect or impact of having such training activities. Okay, so strategic training is linked to how the organization accomplishes its organizational goals. It can have organizational benefits. So the benefits of strategic training in organization, so that's why we have to think strategically because it enables HR and training professionals to get intimately involved with the business. Okay, know that there is what we call as business philosophy. There is like vision, there is mission, and of course the company wants to have a good strategic branding of their business. And so, like, that must be implemented down to the lowest rank within the organization, so much so with the HR department. So, HR's strategies on in all of their activities must be aligned to the overall strategy of the business. Okay, so strategic training enables HR and training professionals to get intimately involved with the business, partner with operating managers to help solve their problems, and make significant contributions to organizational results. Strategic thinking or training mindset reduces the likelihood of thinking that the training alone can solve most employee or organizational problems. In the long term, well, basically, most of those problems encountered by the employees within the context of doing their business, I would say that it will not be abruptly annihilated, but it will just be reduced, right? The likely occurrence of such circumstances or problems would be reduced. There will still be problems after perhaps the training and even the strategic training that you provide, but the reduction must be also worthwhile or significant. Okay? It, it is not or I would say it is common. So it is not uncommon for your managers, the operating managers, and trainers perhaps to normally react to most important performance problem. Let's say they would say that I need a training program on this, I need a training program on that. Because with a strategic training focus, the organization is more likely to assess such requests coming from them to determine what training or non-training approaches might help address the most important performance issues. Okay, we cannot just simply give the training out of us, generously giving the training. We give training because we have basis. Okay, so let's go to the next slide here. So it's about the organizational competitiveness and training. How does training affect organizational competitiveness? So this figure just simply establishes the link of organizational strategies and training. So this also illustrates how training may help accomplish certain organizational strategies. Ideally, of course, the upper management group who might see the training function as providing valuable intelligence about certain necessary core skills. Okay, because training is a part, or providing your employees with training, tactical training or strategic training, part of the company to pursue competitiveness. Okay, all right. Why do we need to manage knowledge? Or why do we need to acquire knowledge in the first place? Okay. Well, for much of the history, the competition and competitive advantage among all the organizations within the industry was measured in terms of physical capital. So, however, the digital and technological age has have evolved, in which information and intelligence has become the raw material that many organizations make and sell through their knowledge workers. This is why most businesses have knowledge management or knowledge database. Okay, knowledge um, is very important for an organization to sustain the competition. Okay, I'll tell you this, that information is the most valuable and asset in the planet nowadays. You might ask why? Because you may consider gold, diamond, or oil being the most valuable asset, okay? Or perhaps money, okay? I would say information, because information, you can make money out of it, okay? Why does China is spying America? Okay? Because they want information. Why does Facebook collect information on your account? It's simply because they want to know. And because of the knowledge that they have, it's tremendous. It's immense. So that's why they develop like knowledge based management. They are able to have like knowledge database, okay? So that by the time they can strategize and move forward their business to be more competitive, they can, you know, they can make and do business out of the information that you have provided. So be very careful about that. But going back to the lesson, okay? So when we say uh, knowledge management, it is the way an organization identifies and leverages knowledge in order to be competitive. It is the art of creating value by using organizational intellectual capital. So the knowledge that you have gained, or the knowledge that the corporation organization have uh, gained, would become part as its organizational intellectual capital, which is what the organization, or more exactly the people in the organization, knows about. Okay, so training as a revenue source, you might ask me why. I'll explain it later through example. So some organizations have identified that training can be a source of business revenue. So this means that company can monetize. Okay, how would a company monetize training when in fact like training is just like part of uh you know making or improving the performance of the workers or employees, right? So, for example, uh, okay, let me just continue. This means that the company can monetize their training on top of the product services that they are selling and providing. I was trying to recall what I have in my mind for an example. Um, hmm, Microsoft. You know what Microsoft is? Okay, Microsoft is the on. Okay, software would always have a bug. There is no such thing as perfect software except Microsoft. I tell you that. Okay? So, Microsoft, Cisco, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Cisco. It's about networking. Um, a company that provides, and supplies, the networking knowledge and business. And Hewlett Packard, okay, that's HP. I mean, the one of the largest provider of for laptops, gadgets, and other stuffs. Okay, so Microsoft, Cisco, or HP, and perhaps some other technology firms would bundle training with products and services sold to customers. Okay, so customers of these firms would pay additional training either by course, by participant, or as part of the equipment that or software that they purchased from these companies. Let's say Cisco. Okay, they provide training, but that's just like the basic training. But if you are able to have the technology of Cisco, you wanted to learn more about it because you want to maximize or optimize such technology. And for you to do that is to acquire more knowledge about the Cisco systems. And so like Cisco provides such training. In fact, they provide certifications, okay, to Cisco engineers. All right? So that's how training can be a source of revenue. Okay? Why do these companies would do that? Okay? Because customer training or training their customers would aid customer retention and that enhances future sales revenues as well. Okay? And customer satisfaction and ultimately loyalty increase if customers know how to use the products or services that they have purchased. Because one thing that frustrates your customer is to be able to have the product and they don't know what to do of the product. Okay, and so like they come back to you and say, hey, there's a bug, there's a bug, there's a bug. And you try to check, okay, whether there's really a bug, only to find out that the customer doesn't know how the product works. All right, next thing here. Are we on performance consulting and strategic training? So, well, training should result in improved organizational performance. So, for some companies, ensuring that it determines what needs to be done to improve organizational and individual results. Well, this is the prime focus of most of the organizations. Okay, so performance consulting is the process in which a trainer and the organizational client would work together to determine what needs to be done to improve organizational and individual results. Performance consulting takes a broad approach by focusing on identifying and addressing root causes of performance problems, recognizing that the interaction of individual and organizational factors influence employee performance, documenting the actions and accomplishments of high performers and comparing them with actions of more typical performers. Okay, so well, basically, when we say performance consulting, regardless of whether the trainer is an internal employee or outside, which we call like consultant. Performance consulting approach recognizes that training alone cannot automatically solve every performance problem that employer is facing. Instead, training is one piece of a larger bundled solution. For instance, an employee performance issues might resolved by, let's say, creating a training for employees, and others might call for compensation or job design changes. So see, that doesn't solve the whole employer problem. Okay, because others might call for simply compensation or like changing the design of the job. Okay, so integration of performance and the training, HR integrates job performance, training, and employee learning to be effective. So organizations on this case are seeking more authentic, therefore, let's say more effective training experiences for their employees. Because like I said, we cannot just simply give training and the training doesn't address the root cause, okay, of the problems, okay? So the businesses would use real business problems to advance employee learning. So rather than separating the training experience from the context of, let's say, actual job performance, trainers incorporate everyday business issues as, let's say, learning examples. And with that, it increases the realism of training exercises and scenario. So for example, um, let's say GE or General Electric, and part of the management training that they have is that managers are given actual business problems to solve, and they must present their solutions to the firm's business leaders. So using real situations for practice is yet another way of merging the lines between training, learning, and performance. Just like the case studies, okay, given to you as part of the activity every after session. Don't you think that I just simply give case studies out of nothing? All right? That is a real business scenarios and for you to be able to solve the cases. Okay, so I hope that you do appreciate that the business cases. But um, in training, okay, there are different styles, okay, or approaches, methodologies in order to optimize the results of the training. All right, training and global strategies. Okay, training must be seen as crucial to global strategic success, especially for organizations that require employees for international assignments. Okay, this is very important in the business process outsource. We we have to think globally because there might be expats coming here to join with us, and that may spell differences that would expound to creating issues at the workplace, or we might be sending Filipinos abroad, right? So there must be like training, okay? Global assignment training, orientation, and training that expats, I mentioned about expats, expatriates, okay, and their families receive before departure. So significantly affect success of an overseas assignment because these programs usually produce positive effect on cross-cultural adjustments. Let's say you will be assigned to for a training to Japan and you don't know anything about Japan. What is the first thing that the company would do? To submit our employee for, let's say, crash course on Japanese language. That's part of, preparing people or employees for a global assignment training. Okay, I mentioned about that one. Or let's say you are a Japanese firms, let's say operating in the Philippines, okay, will conduct training programs to prepare, the Japanese for the kind of food that we have here, the customs, the labor, the HR practices, and other facets of, working and living in the Philippines or any other countries. Okay, the same as with our Filipinos going abroad. That's why, like, I think for the overseas Filipino workers, hopefully that is part now of the um, reorganization or revitalization of the OWA or POEA, that before they send out Filipinos abroad, that there are some cross-cultural training, okay, given. And next is about the intercultural competence training. There is what we call as cultural intelligence, okay, or cultural intelligence, which means to say that a person having cultural intelligence is quite being able to adapt with different culture, okay? Like you tend to behave accordingly to specific culture, and that you don't act aggressively that may offend your the other culture, okay? Or like if there are people who join in your circle or who probably have approached you and this person comes from a different background, different culture, you tend to, and probably he or she said or, you know, did something which might be offensive, you tend to understand or explain, okay, rather than reacting negatively. So that is like having cultural intelligence, okay? So intercultural competence incorporates a wide range of human social skills, okay, and personality characteristics. Global employers are using training methods that allow individuals to behave, okay, I mentioned about behavior, in international situations and then receive feedback, okay? Let me show you here. This is the intercultural competence training. Okay, so what are the components that we have to work on when we provide the training? Okay, so there is cognitive, emotional, and behavioral. Okay, so the possible training for when we have the cognitive component is like the culture specific training. Okay, the traditions, history, cultural customs, etc. Language course, and then emotional, social skills, training focusing on clear or new and intercultural situations, prejudices. There's like coaching, okay, as to the clarification. Let's say smiling may be quite not welcome in some other countries, okay? Or raising your eyebrow may be offensive in some other countries. So be very careful about that. Okay. Sensitivity, communication skills course, that's active listening, verbal, nonverbal cues. Okay, I mentioned about that. Those examples, the nonverbals, that might be offensive to others. Okay, so be very careful about manifesting such when you are in a different country. Behavioral, culture assimilator, international projects, social skills training focusing on intercultural situations. So basically, this figure just provides uh, that there are three components of the intercultural competence, which require your attention when training. Okay, let's say when you train for expats, for global assignments, or when you train Filipinos for global work assignments. Okay. Next is about, okay, this is just like guide questions for you to be able to come up with, specific training. When we say cognitive, that's what does the person know about other culture? Okay, emotional, what does the person view about other cultures and how sensitive is the person to cultural customs and issues? Behavioral, how does the person act in cultural situations? One example of this was before I went to Israel, we I met I met someone who oriented me as to the do's and don'ts in Israel, because Israel is one of the safest places, if not the safest place in the planet. Okay, but when you get inside Jerusalem, there, Jerusalem is a very diverse city. Okay, I'm talking about the walled city, Jerusalem. That's the old city. So we were being acquainted, we were being oriented, and that really helped. Okay, that really helped. So we were able to behave accordingly, not being too offensive or not exactly being offensive to them. And we're quite accepting to how they accept us as well. Okay. Next is about the training components. Please pay attention to this one because this will be part of your activity. Okay. Not anymore a case study. Because I think I mentioned that at some point in time that we have to stop or I have to stop giving you case studies. I think that is on our FB group chat. I hope that you can check on that one. All right. So, what are the training components? And I want you to seriously consider studying this one. Okay. Training plans allow organizations to identify what is needed for employee performance before training begins. It is at this stage that fit with strategic issues is ensured. Okay. So, to have effective training efforts, consider the following questions. One, is there really a need for training? Okay, because training is costly, training is expensive, and when the company shells out money, okay, you know what investors or top level management would ask? How much is the ROI? Okay, is there really a need for the training? So HR, you being the HR, I'm I'm teaching you not to become an employee. I'm teaching you to become an HR, right? You need to justify the necessity for the training. Okay? So this is about the rationale, okay? The background, the justifying reason, your justifying reason on the prevailing circumstances or conditions of the business and what are your objectives, what you wish to achieve. You, like I said, you have to think strategically, okay? And that is like music to the ears to your upper level management, okay? If you align the training to the overall organizational objectives. Okay. Second is who needs the training or who needs to be trained. Okay. So this refers to the participants, the demographic profile or the profile, simply the profile of the applicants or sorry, participants. Okay. Who will do the training? This refers to the provider of the training, whether in-house or internal, or it could be like outsourced and that's external. Okay, that depends upon the budget that you have and what is the objective of your training. Okay, next is what form will the training take? So this refers to the design of your training. Okay, um, how will knowledge be transferred of the job? So this refers to the delivery, okay, the methods and approach that you use to deliver the training. Okay. Next is how will that training be evaluated? And this is now the most crucial part uh, because this measures the training outcomes and this can be done by comparing outcomes against objectives and criteria. Okay. You can actually do research on the training components. Okay. There are a lot of examples and samples for the training components or how to make a training program. Now let's go to the training process. First is we have the training needs assessment. Okay, as you can see on the figure here, uh, well, the way firms organize and structure their training affects the way the employees experience the training, which in turn influences the effectiveness of the training. So, effective training requires the use of a systematic training process, just like this one. Okay? Because one of the questions that was raised in the training component or the aspect for the training component is who is there really a need for the training. So that's why how to do that, okay? How to answer that question? Is there really a need? So there must be a training needs assessment, okay? And to do that, like you have to analyze training needs, identify training objectives and criteria. Okay, so this figure shows the four phases of such training process. The assessment, which is the training needs assessment. The design, which is the training design. That's pre-test trainees, select training methods, plan training content. Okay, so these are just example activities when you do training or when you design training. Then there's like training delivery, okay, the schedule, the conduct, okay, of the training, the monitoring scheme you use for training. So this refers to the training delivery, okay. And the second is about the evaluation, okay. The evaluation that is about measure or measuring training outcomes. Compare outcome to objectives and criteria. So if we try to, all right, I'm sorry about that. If we try to look at this diagram here, it starts with the training needs assessment. Okay, the process starts with TNA or training needs assessment. Okay, training needs analysis is part of the training needs assessment. Okay? Because training needs analysis can be used as a tool, okay, to assess training needs. I hope that you get that clearly. Okay? So again, the four phases of the training would be assessment, design, delivery, and evaluation. All right? So all right, this is it. Let's start with the training needs assessment. This portion here, okay, training needs assessment. Sorry. Assessing organizational training needs represents the diagnostic phase of the training. Okay, that's why you use, again, training needs analysis, this one here. Okay. This is about training needs assessment. Assessing organizational training needs represents the diagnostic phase. So this assessment considers issues and employee and organizational performance to determine if training can help. And needs assessment measures the competencies of a company, a group, or an individual as they relate to what is required in the strategic plan. Okay, so what does the training needs assessment involve? Okay, training needs assessment involves one, training needs analysis. Okay, second is identifying training objectives and criteria. You would know if you use like training needs analysis. Like I said, this is a tool, okay? Just like a SWOT analysis in business, but this one is quite specific for training. Is there really a need for us to have the training, okay? So who would assess, okay? Could be your employees, those employees that are very problematic, okay? What are the other data or information you can use, okay, to justify the training, okay, as part of your training needs analysis, okay? What are the information you need or where do you need to source out such information, okay? Let's say performance evaluation results, okay? With that, okay, so you can already make assessment, okay? And so like you can identify the training objectives and criteria. After, of course, you have gone through the analysis. Okay. Now, what is training needs analysis? Okay. As as can be seen from the figure here, training needs analysis involves gathering of information from different sources. Okay. So where does the information come from? Okay. from the organization itself. Okay, where do we get it? Okay, if there are some grievances report, accident reports, the waste scrap, of course, this is about reporting. Okay, the data. Okay, that's why, like in the operations area, they need to have like daily report, weekly report, and a monthly report so that we would know, we would assess how these people perform. Okay, then training observations. Okay, observations, the complaints, exit interview. Okay, equipment use. Let's say there have been malfunctioning of the equipment simply because people do not know how to use it. Okay, so that's the problem that you need to address. Otherwise, if such issue will, you know, be left unaddressed, so there might be life involved. Okay, so performance would go down. So that's one from the organization itself. So from the organizational analysis, it involves identifying specific knowledge, skills, and abilities. Okay, the KSA again. Okay, uh, that you may need now or in the future. Okay, so organizational analysis would come from various operational measures of organizational performance. Okay, let's say we have to pinpoint department or areas with high turnover or high absenteeism, low performance, or other deficiencies. Okay, so following an analysis of such problems, your training objectives can be developed. Okay, and now let's go to the job or task analysis. Okay, this is about organization and organization-wide sources, but there are sources from the job itself. Okay, well, this entails review of the jobs involved and, of course, the tasks performed in those jobs. So by comparing requirements of the jobs with, of course, we have here employee KSA. This is knowledge, skills, abilities. And of course, the job specification. I hope you can still recall what job specification is. That's duties and responsibilities. Okay. So training needs can be identified. Okay. If, of course, from the information you have gotten from the job or task itself. So the current job specification can also be a source for job analysis. Okay, so I hope that you know what job specification is, like duties and responsibilities. And we also have individual employee sources. Let's say their tests, okay, some other records, uh, the assessment centers. That depends upon the structure of your organization, right? So you can you can just simply conduct survey or through questionnaires like what training do you want, okay, how are you performing your job and what training do you want to help you improve. Okay, that's a simple TNA, training needs analysis. Okay, job knowledge tools and performance appraisal. I think I mentioned about the performance appraisal. Okay, all right, so we discussed about organizational analysis. This involves identifying KSA, and then job and task analysis, and then the individual analysis. So individual analysis focuses on individuals and how they perform the jobs. And then, of course, these are the basis for individual analysis. Okay. So when we say organizational analysis, that involves identifying KSA that you need now and in the future. Organizational analysis come from various operational measures of organizational performance. You need to pinpoint department areas with high turnover, high absenteeism, low performance, and other deficiencies. And following an analysis of such problems, training objectives can be developed. Job task analysis entails review of jobs involved and the tasks performed in those jobs by comparing requirements of jobs with the KSA of employees, the training needs can be identified. So current job specifications can also be a source of job analysis. Now, um, let's identify the training objectives and criteria here. Okay. So, as you can recall that in order to have or to assess training needs, okay, to have like training needs assessment, okay, there must be like, or that involves one, training needs analysis. And so you identify training objectives and criteria. Okay. So to do that, there are three types of training objectives which you can set. Okay. One is knowledge. This is about impart cognitive information and details to trainees. Skill. This is about to develop behavior changes in how jobs and various tasks requirements are performed. Attitude. This creates interest in and awareness of the importance of training. Okay. So your objectives and criteria will be set on this one, knowledge, skills, and attitude. Okay. This figure suggests that once learning, you have here learning readiness, learning styles, learning transfer, that would equal to effective learning. So effective learning comes from learner's readiness, okay, the styles, and the learning transfer. So this figure uh, suggests that once learning readiness has been considered, then learning styles and learning transfer become a focus. And that would constitute to effective learning. So because of the combination of such three components. Okay. Well, training must be designed in order to address the assessed specific needs. And training or effective training design considers learning concepts and a wide range of different approaches to training. So, working in organization should be a continual learning process. And of course, learning should always be the focus in all training activities. So, different approaches are possible because the learning process is all about a complex psychological process. Okay. So there are three primary considerations when designing training. Okay. One is determining learner readiness. So that's why, as you can see with the figure here, it's learning readiness. And then second is about understanding different learning styles. So that's why learning style. And then designing training transfer. Okay, that's learning transfer. Okay, let's start with learning or learner's readiness and how to determine it. Okay, so for training to be successful, learners should have the ability to learn, motivation and learn, to motivation to learn and self-efficacy. So when we say self-efficacy, that refers to a person's belief that he or she can successfully learn the training program content. Of course, that when you go to the training or before you go to the training, you already have to condition your mind, okay? That you're ready to submit yourself for training, okay? So that makes yourself ready. There is more like intrinsic motivation in your end to learn. So why are you enrolling the subject, by the way? Okay, I hate to receive um, answers that okay, I enroll this subject simply because this is required by the course, okay? But for me to graduate, this is a requirement. I hate to hear that, and you know, I somehow am frustrated if I am able to hear that one. Because, like, when you enroll the subject, know that you spend for it, right? So the motivation itself should come from yourself, okay? The motivation to learn not just a simple thing, but to learn more about this, of course, any training or let's say this subject, okay? So there is more of an individual component. And I would say like following the principle, the Pareto analysis here, 20% only is the input, okay? So 80% should be the output. And the output should come from, let's say, from the learners themselves, okay? So there should be like ability for you to learn and motivation to learn and self efficacy. Okay. Without this, then you basically do not uh, give justice to your own investment. Okay. And all right, here. How to understand the different learning styles. Okay. I think that one of the values for USJR, core values, um, is just being resilient. So I can just very well relate of this one. If we propagate resiliency, um, then we should be able to cope with learning styles. Different styles, different trainers have different styles of delivering the training. Different instructors have different, styles as well. Okay, so in designate designing or designating a training, or I would say designing training, uh, the trainers would consider individual learning styles. Okay, I have it in my mind also. Um, but when I come up the my own syllabus for this subject, that I am going to train students to become HR professionals. Okay, that's what in my mind. Okay, so that's why you know um, my style is my style is geared towards giving you like real, close to real. I would say real, but close to real because case study is though it happened in real situations, but it may or it may not happen when you know you assume as an as HR professional. Okay, so well in like I said in designing the training, we consider individual learning styles. Okay, for example, there are people who are quite um, concerned with listening, okay? So those people who are auditory, okay, or more of like, yes, auditory. So these learners would learn best by listening to someone else who would tell them about, of course, the training, the content of the training. There are people who are tactile, okay? So these are learners that must get their hands on or actuations or movements. Of course, they will have to they will have to have like a benefit most of the training when they are able to move their hands or see people moving their hands and that the learners would be able to use or to be mobile, to be tactile. Okay, there are also visual learners. Okay, learners that are into pictures, okay, figures, okay. And of course, there's a need to see such purpose and process of the training. So, as instructors or trainers, we would be able to address, okay, these needs or styles needs by using multiple, of course, methods. And of course, our training can be designed to be more effective, okay? But due to the pandemic, as I have been quoting, we transitioned to e-learning, okay? So that's why it would have been best if the subject was given to us ahead of time so that we could perhaps prepare the slides to be quite more interactive. There are like doodles, some styles, right? To animate, and then because we use, like on my end, I use recording, but in e-learning, I think we were oriented to use blended learning scheme. All right. So that's why like we have one meeting, okay, via Zoom. And if the government would allow us to travel, so we can also integrate that. So it depends upon the profile. But due to the exigencies and the urgency of the matter, okay, that you do summer, so like we go for online learning. And if you try to research on the website that there are some training providers, say Udemy, Coursera, and all the stuffs, online learning, they do recording, and that becomes effective. One of the measures of its effectiveness is, of course, the subscription. Okay, and then it's not really cheap to purchase one course from, let's say, Coursera or Udemy. It's very expensive. So that's why I am coming up with this recording, and I may update, okay, the topic, the content of it, and how this um, session is being presented. So I hope that you can, after you end the summer, you would still have to visit the link for your future reference. Okay, so much with that. The training design must consider that all the trainees are adult, okay? So that is one thing that we consider, but they come with widely varying learning styles, experiences, and personal goals. So that's why we consider adult learning. Okay, this is based on Malcolm Knowles' classic work on adult learning, which indicates that there are five principles for designing training for adults, which suggest that one, adult would say that I have the need to know, and I know the reason why I am learning, okay, something. So they have the need to know and why they are learning something, and have a need to be self-directed. Another principle will be bring more work-related experiences into the learning process. Okay, so there will be more real uh, life scenarios also in this. Then enter into a learning experience with a problem-centered approach to learning. Okay, and that adult learners are motivated to learn by both extrinsic and intrinsic factors. There are some learners I have who are really older than me, and so like I always ask them, what is their motivation behind, okay, enrolling subject like operations management or human resources management. So and that would reflect the extrinsic and intrinsic factors, those things that they need, um, and those that come from their inner need. Okay, well, of course, when we say adult learning, effective training should involve participants in learning. So we need to engage them in the learning and problem-solving process. So if you're having difficulties with the case studies with the subject, so that is like a reaction. And well, in an adult learning setup, the more we are able to give problems, so then the more they will be engaged. Okay? So, um, because what we are going to drive at here is the motivation, the engagement of the learners. So, when you try to create your training, there must still be an aspect of difficulty, there must still be an aspect of mystery and surprise. There are a lot of surprises, okay, to make the training more effective, okay? So, active practice occurs when trainees perform job-related tasks and duties during training. It is more effective than simply reading or passively listening. Okay, the best part of the training is for people to be able to actually apply what they have learned in the training. Okay, so that's why there's active practice. It can be constructed in two ways: spaced practice, which occurs when several practice sessions are spaced over a period of hours or days. Massed practice occurs when a person performs all the practice at once. Okay, and for instance, um, just assume that a person is being trained as a customer service representative. So after being some basic or given some basic selling instructions and product knowledge details, the trainee calls a customer and uses the knowledge he gained from the training. Okay, so that's why, like, when you apply for a call center job and there's what we call as training or nesting, okay, or say first training. So there's like call simulations, okay, and of course, like you will be given um, actual work, but that will still be part of your training. Okay, so what you have learned from the training per se will be applied to the actual work, which is, part of your training in essence. So that's what we call as nesting. Okay, then there is what we call as behavioral modeling because this is about adult learning. Okay, we are still under learning style. So there's like adult learning and there's like behavioral modeling training. So um, this is through copying someone else's behavior. There is someone that you probably admire or whose leadership and management styles that you wanted to benchmark or copy. So the use of behavior modeling is particularly appropriate for skill training in which the trainees must use both knowledge and practice. Okay. Let's say like in gymnastics, okay, they have like models or people that they admire. And so like the skill of that person is the kind of skill that you wanted to acquire. It can aid in the transfer and knowledge of those skills by those trained. Okay. So, in behavioral modeling is used extensively as the primary means for training supervisors and managers to acquire interpersonal skills. Like I have mentioned about, you have a manager whom you really appreciate or admire, and you wanted to benchmark his skills in management. Okay. So, let's say a supervisor would be able to receive training and mentoring on how to handle disciplinary actions or discussions with employees simply by, let's say, observing as the HR, how the HR director or the HR department manager deals with such kinds of problems. So let's say you are a team leader, and so like of course part of your job is to handle disciplinary action or sanctions with your employees. Okay, so for you to be able to have a training or an effective uh, performance of such function is, let's say, we do behavioral modeling. So we will let you observe how we do disciplinary process. Okay, so let's say if there's an admin hearing, we will invite you, sit there, okay, to observe. Okay, so that's behavioral modeling. But behavioral modeling uh, encompasses with such those examples that I have given to you. Okay, so this is quite broad, and being an HR um, practitioner or professional, you should be able to articulate your training based on the behavioral modeling. Then there is like reinforcement and immediate confirmation. So the concept of reinforcement is based on the law of effect. So which states that people tend to repeat responses that give them some type of positive reward and to avoid actions associated with negative consequences. And when we say immediate confirmation, this is based on the idea that people learn best if reinforcement and feedback, okay, are given as soon as possible after the training. Okay? So the learning process would be effective if there is, feedbacking. And that, well, of course, when we say immediate confirmation, it corrects error. And that if it is made throughout the training, um, it might establish an undesirable pattern. So that would need to be unlearned also. So this aids with the transfer of training to the actual work done. So when I say that immediate confirmation, this is just to correct errors that if it is made throughout the training, such error might establish an undesirable pattern, which need also to be unlearned. Okay, that's why like feedbacking is very important. Okay. Um, uh, Next is about the designing training for transfer. Okay. Well, HR should design training for the purpose of the highest possible transfer from the training class to the actual job. All right? And transfer occurs when trainees actually use on the job what knowledge and information they learned from the training. Okay? Well, a number of the a number of approaches can definitely increase the transfer of training. Okay? Let's say we offer trainees an overview of the training content and the process before the actual training, which would seem to help with both short-term and long-term training transfer. So another a specific way to help or aid the transfer of training to job situation is to ensure that the training would reflect the job content as much as possible. And to effectively do that, it should meet the two conditions here. One, so that to have like effective training transfer, or transfer of training, um, it should meet on these two conditions. Uh, First is that the trainees can take the material learned in training and apply it to the uh, job context in which they work, and the employees maintain their use of the learned material over time. Okay. Well, whatever the approach used, there will always be a variety of considerations that must be balanced when selecting the training delivery methods. So, what are these common variables, okay, in selecting the training delivery methods? One is the nature of training, the subject matter learning, the number of trainees, individual versus team, self-paced versus guided, training resources costs, e-learning versus traditional, geographic location, time allotted, completion timeline. Okay. Next is about the internal training. Okay. When we say internal training, skills-based technical training is conducted inside the organization. Okay. Uh, Internal training, well, I would say generally applies very specifically to the organization and its jobs. So it is popular because it saves the cost of sending employees away from training, and this often avoids the cost of outside trainers. So that's why it's called internal. Okay. All right. So internal training, which is informal training. Okay. So there can be informal training that is done internally. So one internal source of training is informal training, which occurs through interactions and feedback among employees. Well, much of what the employees know about their jobs, they learn informally from, let's say, asking questions and getting advice from other employees and their supervisors, rather than from formal training programs. So that's why it's called informal. Okay? Because you can just ask question. If you don't know something, and if you probably forget your training, so you ask someone. So that's part of informal training. Okay, you ask someone, so you will be guided. That's why in the onboarding process, we will have like buddying system. There will be somebody assigned, okay, who would check with you from time to time. How are you doing? Okay, if you are not doing, or performing your job, so then there will be a bit of coaching from your body, or if you don't know this, how to operate this equipment, so then you can ask. There will be someone who would assist you. So that's part of informal training. All right, and then we have internal training, which is about on-the-job training. So the most common type of training at all levels in an organization is on-the-job training because it is flexible and relevant to what employees do. So I was about to show you the figure here, but let's just move to internal training, cross training before we go back to OJT. Okay, so internal training or cross training occurs when people are trained to do more than one job. So their own job and someone else's job. Okay, but this is something that you as an HR uh, officer would be very careful about because this might be prone to abuses. I mean, like somebody might be quite lazy enough to hand over all the tasks and functions to the trainees because they would always have the excuse that that's part of your uh, cross training. Okay, and cross training occurs when people are trained to do more than one job. Okay, oh, this is just like a repetition, sorry about that. All right, let's go back to OJT here. So there are stages for the on-the-job training. Preparedness of the trainee. So we have to put them at ease, find out what they know, get them interested, then present the information, tell, show, question, okay, or ask question. Then present one point at a time. Make sure the trainees know, okay. Have the trainees practice. So have the trainees perform the tasks. Okay. So ask questions, observe and correct, then evaluate mastery. Okay. And then do follow up. Put the trainees on their own, check frequently, and reduce follow up as performance improves. Okay. Well, OJT should be planned in such that supervisor or manager conducting the training must be able to both teach and show the employees what to do. And of course, well planned and well executed OJT can be very, very, very effective. So based on the guided form, if you have it, um, let's say in some companies they call it job instruct job instruction training. So that's like a guided form for for the parties involved. So that is one aspect for the OJT to become most effective if there's like a logical progression of stages. Okay, as these stages for the OJT training is quite recommended, highly recommended, because as you can see, there is like a progress. So preparedness, okay, and then like presentation, and then like practice or the practical, and then follow up. Okay, this is what I am doing with you. Okay, like I am preparing the materials. Um, you can research the materials by using the internet resources that we have, and then present the information through recording. Then have the trainees practice. Okay. Of course, like there might be some activities that we have, and of course we do follow up. Okay. And so like with the follow up, of course this is where in normal cases, if this is about work, your after the training, your performance will be monitored. Okay, your performance will be monitored and you will be evaluated. Okay, so on our end, the evaluation would perhaps be more of the examination. Okay, then we go to the external training. Okay, external training or training that takes place outside the employing organization. First, we discuss about the internal training. Okay, there are several reasons. Okay, it may be less expensive. The organization may have insufficient time, so that's why we go for external training. Because developing training materials, if you do that and if you don't have the capacity to do that, then that's basically very tedious. Okay, and it's useless to develop internal materials if you are not quite sure if that hits the objectives or criteria that you have set for the training, right? So, second is there are advantage. HR may not have the necessary level of expertise for the subject matter. That's why you hire or you go for external training. And there are advantages to having employees interact with managers and peers in other companies in training programs. Okay, which if it is held externally, that's one aspect of or beauty of external training because you get to interact, okay, with others. But Um, of course, if that is an open training also. All right. External training may be in a form of outsourcing training. So many employers of all sizes um, outsource their training to external training firms and consultants. So right now there are a lot of training institutions in the Philippines, in Cebu. There are some consultants that provide training, and then like on my end, I meet clients and then like they would say, I need this training. Of course, like I need to assess what do they really need, no? Before I can recommend something. It's just like being a doctor. You need to conduct diagnostic tests so that you can prescribe the medicine, the proper medicine uh, to cure perhaps whatever illness that may show during your diagnosis, okay, or during the diagnosis. Next is the educational assistance program. So, of course, like if the company is quite generous enough, the company will have to send their employees to higher educational institution to, pursue masters or doctorate programs or some other certification programs. Okay, so I hope that in time you will be able to be in a company that is quite generous enough. But if the company is not providing you educational assistance program and you are wanting to learn further, so then, well, you do it your own. Okay, and I guess that on your end, you can feel the brunt of the challenge simply because you are spending for uh, your course perhaps or your tuition fees. Um, and so like some of you may really need to learn further or to maximize the learning of this subject. Okay? So hopefully you will be able to get an employer who is quite generous enough, okay, to send you for further uh, education. Next is about cooperative training. So it is mixed, okay, classroom training and on-the-job experiences. And this training can take on several forms: school to work transition, apprentice training, and internship. Okay, so this is like a mix of training. Okay, but of course, like these approaches of training would depend upon the decision of the company. Okay. Then there's like an instructor-led classroom and conference training. So most prevalent approach to training, employer-conducted short courses, lectures, and meetings usually consist of classroom training, whereas numerous employees development courses offered by professional organizations, trade associations, and educational institutions. So I think like you are blessed enough to be in such company that provides training. Um, but again, not all companies. This is quite ideal, right? This is quite ideal. But company will have to make a decision that what it thinks to be workable on their end and efficient on their end in terms of cost and effectiveness of the results of the training. Because there will always be costs involved here, whether we go for cooperative training or instructor-led classroom and conference training, so there will always be cost. Even if you do online training, I tell you. Okay, let's say Udemy will offer you $9.99, okay, for one training course, and that is like for what? A training course that is 1 star only. Okay, for a training course or training courses that is like 5 or 4 star, well, that's even more. Okay, so you would spend more. Next is about the orientation, okay, the onboarding for new employees. This is, I would say, one of the most important, if not the most important, and this is also widely conducted type of regular training for new employees. Okay, orientation is the planned introduction of new employees to their job because a new employee that is accepted or hired uh, by a company, and if you do not give them orientation, most likely would resign. Okay, because they would not understand how things go within that organization. They're outside and now they are part of the culture, part of the organization, and if you don't orient them, so most likely they are prone to commit something that is in violation of the code of conduct, the policies, the rules and regulations of the company. So that is quite too unfair on the part of the employees. Again, um, this will have, legal implications also. Because if you tend to regularize that employee and there was no orientation, and so, like, once he or she is regularized and he commits or she commits something and you fired him or her, and he can go to Dole and he can prove that there was no orientation given, so that will be something that the company would be quite uh, a difficult thing to solve for the on the part of the company. Next is, okay, the effective orientation achieves several key purposes. Okay, should establish favorable employee impression, provides organization and job information, enhances interpersonal acceptance, accelerates socialization and integration of new employee into the organization. Okay, and it ensures employee performance and productivity. Now it's e-learning. Okay, this is what we're doing. So online training, online teaching. E-learning is the use of internet. Okay, and there's like distance training or learning. Again, this is part of e-learning. What we are doing right now is a form of distance training or distance learning. Okay, we use Blackboard, or now we are calling that as LMS. Okay, and there are a lot of free open source. Okay, and as I have been telling you from the very start of our meeting, that we leverage all technologies available. Like in this sense, I'm using YouTube, okay, YouTube channel, and we're using Facebook for our, if you have some questions, and we're using Google for our like email, and we're using Zoom, okay? So we're using multimedia here, or multi platform in social media, okay, for our distance and online training. Simulations and training. When we say simulation, this is like the example I have given you about the customer service, being trained how to handle calls and now like, try to take calls. Okay, it's just part of simulation. Okay. Virtual reality is also used to create an artificial environment for trainees. Okay, for quite technical training that may need, okay, simulations. So there will always be some virtual um, integration. Okay. Blended learning approach that combines short, fast-paced, interactive, computer-based lessons and teleconferencing with traditional classroom instruction and simulation. Okay. I hope that, I have a studio wherein there's like a whiteboard and a camera that would eventually, have a live feed on the channel, so I can do some classroom instruction just to satisfy blended learning approach. Okay. What are the advantages and disadvantages of e-learning? This is something that we have to, just because um, it's convenient. E-learning is convenient, but just because it is convenient, it doesn't mean to say that, it's effective or so, right? So there will always be advantages and disadvantages, okay? But um, while we can account advantages and disadvantages, I think it makes sense that we have to focus on the advantages first and like work on whatever disadvantages or inconveniences that we may have due to e-learning. So let's say self-paced, okay? This is self-directed on your end because like you have to do a lot of reading, you have to spend more time learning, unlike in like a physical face-to-face classroom instruction wherein like questions are done real time, and then like I don't need to record, okay, and it's quite spontaneous when there's a face-to-face. Like I said, it's real time, okay, but when it's recording or like e-learning, so then like it's self-paced, okay. You might be bored with the lecture, the same as you will be bored while inside the classroom. But just that when you are bored listening the recorded lecture, you have the right or you have all the yes, you have all the right to let's say pause or exit. But when you are bored inside the classroom, you are duty bound to stay within the 1 hour and 40 minutes. Okay? So you can go through the advantages and disadvantages in here. But I said that um, see one of the advantages of the e-learning is just during the pandemic like this, we are able to use this one. Otherwise, if there is no internet and this thing happened, this health emergency happened in our time and no internet, no telecommunications. So basically, you will stop studying. Okay? So there is like stagnation of your learning. You cannot proceed, you cannot graduate immediately because there is no means, right? So we have to be able to maximize or optimize the usage or benefits of e-learning. Okay? So certain criteria to consider before adopting e-learning, okay? In our case, you should have like a phone that it would be able to connect you online, and that phone should have at least capacity to download some materials, PDF, Word file, that you should be able to have connection as well. But of course, generally, these are the criteria for management to consider before adopting e-learning. There should be like top management support because sorry, it might be expensive. Let's say if like I am now enrolling a lot of online courses, okay, and that is the management's with management's approval, okay. So the management will have to spend, okay, will have to fund for my online courses in Udemy and Coursera, okay. So just like you, I have my instructors, I have my modules, I have my courses, and on my own pacing and on my own time, I would be able to access that. And that's like lifetime on my end. So see, I can do the activities, okay? It's just that I am purchasing that, okay? And it is not a requirement for me to take examinations, okay? But there are courses or online courses that would, require you to take the examinations before uh, giving you the next lesson, okay? But on your end, okay, of course, this is like a traditional academic setup. So for your online learning, for your e-learning, there will always still be checking of knowledge because the instructor of the training courses that I had taken were being paid and were not supposed to give me grade, no? But on your end, as part of the traditional academic requirement, professors or instructors are duty bound to give you grades, right? And so like we need to ensure or devise mechanism to justify the kind of grades that we are giving to you. Okay, so that's like there are activities, there are some case studies, there are some examinations, some projects, group works, so those things. Okay, but this one are the criteria for a company to consider before adopting e-learning. So managers and HR professionals must be retrained. Of course, as an HR trainer, okay, you should, or head of the training department in HR, so then you should also be retrained, okay? Then current training methods are not adequately meeting organizational training needs, or potential learners are adequately computer literate and that have ready access to computers and internet. So this is one aspect, okay? So that's why I know that some of you are forced to buy mobile phone right now. Some of you are forced to subscribe for an ISP, Internet Service Provider. But there will always be good things of doing that. Okay, perhaps after taking the HR management course, you will have like online job in there. Okay, and another one is trainees attending training programs are geographically separated and time travel and cost are concerns. Let's say my instructors right now are from different countries, okay? So it doesn't matter when you go for online learning. Why? Because like I can just do it on my own time. I don't need to attend in their class, okay? Uh, with the time that they are awake, okay? So this is one thing that justifies my action to do the recording as well. Let's say that you don't have the current time, Monday to Friday, for your 7 to 8:40 p.m. classes, because that time, the signal may be bad on your end. So at least with the recording, you can access the recordings anytime you want, okay? And if you have to do the activity again, you can perhaps review your notes and try to check again the links, okay? I'm trying to sell you the concept of e-learning right now. So this would be if you are quite, you know, uh, adept to social media platforms or interactions. So I don't think it is so much of an adjustment that you will have to do if you undergo for e-learning. Perhaps on the input devices that you may need. Let's say your own infrastructure there is a problem. Let's say you don't have the phone, you are just borrowing a phone, you don't have the ISP, regular line. So that what I call as input devices that you have. Okay. So, but hopefully that I said we can optimize the learning for online or using online mechanism. Okay. Now let's go to training evaluation. We have done to understand what training is all about, the components of training, the kinds of training available. Now let us discuss the levels of evaluation. Okay. So as you can see the figure here, it shows that well, the levels of training evaluation is based on Kirkpatrick's theory, and the whole evaluation of training becomes successively more difficult. Okay, why? Because as it moves from the measuring of reactions to measuring the learning to, let's say, measure the behavior and then measuring the results, as you can see, there are four levels here. Reaction, measuring the reaction, measuring the learning, measuring the behavior, and measuring the results, okay? So do you think that's really easy? Okay, actually that's not too easy though, okay? But of course, the training that affects the behavior and results versus perhaps there is the training that affects the behavior and the results versus the training that affects the reaction and the learning would provide greater value in viewing the training itself as a strategic performance contributor. Okay, let's say if you proved it that based on the training, when you assess that there is a significant improvement in terms of the behavior and the performance results of the participant. So what impact would it give to the organization? Okay, would you like to think that organization will have such capacity to have like high performing employees who have manifested certain behavior that is desirable enough in order to achieve competitiveness of your organization? So, um, the first stage is about the reaction. Okay, so it's the easy way to assess what is the reaction of your uh, okay, like I said, it's very easy to assess because organizations evaluate the reaction levels of trainees by conducting interviews with administering questionnaires to the trainees. Okay, so let's say that right after the training that has been given to them, you also have to give them the evaluation to check with the reaction. So a reaction level measure could be gathered by, of course, having the managers perhaps complete a survey that would ask them to rate the value of the training, okay, the style of the instructor, okay. Let's say like you attended a training, okay, and those participants are managers, so they will be made to complete a survey uh, to check with how the value of the training, and then the style of the instructors, the trainers, the usefulness of the training. Okay, so if the survey were administered immediately after the workshop, well, it may only measure how much the participants like the training. But with the levels of training evaluation that we are trying, or I am trying to inculcate with you, is that when you check with the reaction, rather than checking immediately the reaction of the participants right after the training is done, okay, it should be that the assessment, okay, or the reaction should be measured on how the training benefited the participants and how the training affected or has affected the participants in their way, in their, you know, conduct perhaps. Okay? So this may happen like few days, few weeks after the training is done. Okay? Because like I said, if you only measure on how much the participants like the training rather than, how it benefits them, so then you may not exactly get the real reaction, okay, of the applicants or of the participants, sorry. So learning is the second level, which is evaluated by measuring how well trainees have learned the facts, the ideas, the concepts, the theories, and attitudes. Of course, like if you wanted to introduce tests, um, there are materials which you commonly used for evaluating training. So um, you can perhaps compare the results for the tests of the participants before they join the training and after they join the training. So if test scores would indicate, learning problems, then, you know, there should be feedback with the instructors and the courses. So we will have to redesign perhaps. And so that the content can be delivered more effectively. Behavior. So evaluating training at the behavioral level means measuring the effect of training on job performance through interviews of trainees and their coworkers, observing job performance. So, uh, when we say behavior, evaluation should be broadly based on the performance management improvements. Okay? Like I said, do not evaluate that the after the training per se. Okay? It should be like the performance. I mean, has there been improvements of the behavior of the participants who once sent for training when they already are back to work? Okay, has there been improvement in their behaviors? Okay, but well, I would say that behaviors are more difficult to measure than the reaction and learning, and perhaps that even if behaviors really change after the training, the results that the management perhaps would be interested to get, they may not actually be able to obtain such results. Okay. Next is the final level, which is the result. So employers evaluate results by measuring the effects of training on the achievement of organizational objectives. This is what I have been telling you right from the start of this recording, that there should be strategic uh, implication for giving the training. Has it been contributory to the overall organizational objectives? Okay, because results such as productivity, let's say employee retention, turnover, or quality, even the time, or sales perhaps, and the costs, these are relatively concrete. And this type of evaluation can be done by, comparing records before and after. So there must be, as an HR, you must have records also. So the difficulty with measuring results is pinpointing whether, changes were actually the results of the training or some other major factors. Okay? Let's say that after the training, you would say there is an improvement with the performance. Okay? But hey, there was one major factor involved, which is, you know, the technology being used. Okay? So it's not just the training, it's the technology itself. Okay? So we should be able to evaluate training. Okay? And there are metrics used. As you can see here, that training is expensive and it is an HR function that requires measurement and monitoring. Okay, so there should be cost benefit analysis and return on investment analysis are commonly used to do so as the various benchmarking approaches. So, um, there is like cost benefit analysis. Okay, training results can be examined through cost-benefit analysis, which is the comparison of costs and benefits associated with training. Again, when you design your training, you already consider how much is uh, the outlying cost and the potential benefits that the company would have. So that's why you need to justify. Let's say I am the general manager and you are the HR manager, okay? And then you propose to me a training, okay? And I am not keen to provide the training or to have the training rolling simply because for me it's costly. But you have to convince me the benefit, okay? We have a problem, okay? High turnover, people are bickering, there is like corporate politics, okay? We cannot compete the competitors, there is like performance issues. So you have to, give me a proposal that would convince me the benefit of the trainings that you are pursuing, okay? Because even if I know that these problems exist, being the general manager, I wouldn't know what intervention I would have in my mind. Okay? Unless otherwise HR would come into the picture, okay, and bring me proposal. Okay, these are the interventions, okay, for the current dilemma that you are facing. Okay, so that's why like being the general manager, so you have the HR manager, you have the sales and marketing manager, you have the finance manager that would help you come up with a solution or intervention, okay, to solve the problem. So there are four stages in calculating training costs and benefits. Determine training cost. How much does the training would cost? Okay. What are the savings? Okay. And you should be able to, compute the potential savings. Let's say if we are not going to provide this training, you know what? There will be more people leaving. Okay. And you know what? These people are quite core in the company. So their knowledge and expertise are needed by the company. So if we let them leave without having this training, so then basically it would be very hard on our end to start again. Okay? If we are able to hire people who are good, we cannot be sure, the length of time that we spend having these newly hired people to replace these outgoing employees, and we could not be assured of that they would come into, certain pace and speed. Okay? So you need to convince, okay, the potential savings and benefits. And of course, you have to conduct cost and savings benefits comparison. Next is about benchmarking. Okay, some organizations use benchmark measures to compare it with the training done. It's about comparing or comparison, or about like you basically have the data if it is available. Because you know I doubt if how closely knit the organizations in one industry that they are quite open to benchmarking the uh, training and the measures being used. But eventually, you can devise your own measure. Being in the human resources department, there will always be some tools or technologies used to measure. If some fellows in the industry would use certain technologies uh, used to measure the training, so then you can benchmark that one. Okay. So to do benchmarking, HR professionals gather data on training in their organization and compare them with data on training at other organizations. This is what I am telling you, that it may be hard, right? That comparison may be commercial in confidence, so it may not be available. So what you do with benchmarking is just like um, you just do some research, what specific tools that may work on you, and then you can use that as a measure, okay? Let's say to evaluate your training or benchmarking the training itself. Um, let's say that there are some available trainings online, and based on the reviews, they would say that, okay, this works on our organization. So that is a form of benchmarking. That works with them. So perhaps, okay, I am using the word perhaps because if it works for them, it doesn't necessarily mean to say that it will work for your organization. So that's where, when we say benchmarking, it doesn't mean to say that you have to copy from A to Z, okay? It's just like have to be selective with, the things that are applicable and not applicable with your organization. Okay, I think that ends up the session here. And to sum up, the training is the process. Training is the process that provides your people with the capabilities that they need, of course, to do their job. So, a strategic approach to training would link your organization's strategies and the HR planning together with their strategies to the various training efforts which they will have to introduce or propose. And that the effects of or the training affects the factors such as the competitiveness of your organization, the knowledge management, your revenue, and the performance of the company. So the global strategies or your corporate strategies must consider training as a, your key component to include some trainings to prepare your people for some international assignments or to prepare your people for a possibility of hiring some international employees as well. So you should be able to fit in with the global standards. That's what I am trying to drive at. So and to prepare your employees to respond more appropriately to certain situations that they may encountered along or doing with the course of their tasks or jobs. Okay, so I hope that you learned something from the session. There will be notes given to you, and there are some activities as well. Thank you so much for your time.